welcome to part 2 of our 2-part Superintendent series, where we are joined with Justin Goodlaxson and Noah Westlake. Enjoy.
Justin, you mentioned earlier, you've said it a few times, and referenced Tom Arrington's name as probably a mentor to you and where you're at. And Noah, I think you probably have mentioned that, Justin was a mentor to you, which gets me to my question of, if this industry is scaling as much as it is, we have to mentor individuals. What's your approach to build a culture and or mentor individuals for that next generation so they can be in this place in 5 to 10 years? How do you go about that, and what's your thoughts on it?
I think one of the biggest things, and Justin, correct me if I'm wrong, one of the biggest things Tom Arrington taught the two of us is there's a certain point in your career where you're managing less and less of the project and you're managing more and more in the people, which goes to your point of, if we're not coaching up the next generation, there's going to be nobody up there, and it's our job to start coaching those people. And one thing I think Tom Arrington did more than most is he gave Justin and I all the opportunity in the world. There's a trust level there that he instilled in everybody. But one story that comes to mind is, I saw the ball sitting on the field. I went up and talked to Tom and said, "Hey, I see this ball sitting here. I want to pick it up and run with it." And after about the third time of doing that, Tom said, "No, you don't have to come and ask me every time you want to run with the ball." He said, "You just pick it up and start running with it." He goes, "If I see you starting getting close to the sidelines, I'll get you back in the center. But, you can just pick the ball up and run with it." I think a lot of that is, having the trust in us to let us not only do our jobs, and take on extra responsibility. But, that guidance was always there overlooking what we're doing and never letting us get out of our, getting over our ski tips.
Nice.
I think it's the same thing. A lot of people, not everybody, but a lot of people learn by drinking from the fire hose. And that's just taking on more responsibility than they thought they could. But you still have to keep them, keep them away from the sidelines. But you have to, I guess if you want to use emotional intelligence, or you have to judge the people that you have around you and place them in the right position for what their skills are. There's some of their skills might be towards mechanical, electrical. If I were to go back in time and place Noah on something, I would find the most detailed project ever, where you're going to read every schematic and what size of screw and what color that screw is. And that's where I'm going to put Noah, because that's what Noah's good at, right? But if you go to, I don't know, Derek Verslois, I'm just going to say that name. I'm going to go find something that's big, structural, and you need like a bull in a china shop to go running right through it, right? Because that's what he's good at. But at the same time, he knows the details and he can talk to people, right? So you have to put them in a position. You're not going to take somebody who's done electrical all his life and his very first job as Jay Dunn, go make him the concrete guy. That's not a recipe for success for him. It makes him or her uncomfortable, right? And it's a detriment to the job. Now, if this person wants to learn concrete, that's great. Let them go over there and help somebody else. But you have to be willing to, as Noah said, give people a chance and give them responsibility and get out of the way, but you still have to watch them. We, as leaders, have to work harder than those that we're responsible for, because we have to know what they're doing and if they're getting close to the edge. If we don't know what they're doing, if we don't know where the problems are, then we're not going to be able to help them. So then everybody's going to go off the cliff. I think training people up is really about making sure that you're putting them in the right box so they can grow, and then they make one really good leap and think, wow, I did that. Then the box is going to get a little bit bigger.
You're identifying individuals that exploits their strengths, makes them be successful in whatever they're doing. Like Noah being extremely detailed, And to your point of Derek, just being the big picture, I can go manage and take this. And I want to pivot and get off of, construction. I want to have some fun here and talk about, we are data distilled. So I would like to talk about what would your cocktail of choice be? And most people, I hear various answers here, but before we get into what, a spirit kind of cocktail, Noah, what's your favorite order at Starbucks? Speaking of very, very high level individuals versus very detailed like you, I believe you have a very detailed Starbucks order, if I'm not mistaken.
You are thinking of the incorrect person. I am a straight up Americano.
I'm hearing you wanted a brown sugar oat milk shaken espresso with light ice.
That is false. I'm assuming that came from one Mr. Downtown Craig Brown.
That is 100% correct.
And I just ordered what he had. I was trying to be simple.
All right. So then what would your cocktail of choice be?
I'm a Sazerac guy.
Nice.
I like
Neat
that
or
anise
rocks?
flavor. I prefer it on the rocks.
Me too. Mr. Goodlaxson.
My first answer to both of those questions is always
Unsweet tea.
iced tea. Yep, unsweet tea first.
If you're talking to Justin in the South, it's unsweet tea.
Unsweet tea, that's right. And then after that, it really kind of depends on what everybody else is doing. It's not very exciting, I know, but if you're with Todd Lounsbury, it's probably going to be a beer, right? So let's just go with that.
I classify that. So Justin, I respect that because that's sometimes where I get to on it's less thinking. I will consider myself a non-denominational drinker or a social drinker or a equal opportunity drinker. Whatever's being poured, I'll drink. So I'm perfectly fine with that answer.
If you're with Les
passes.
Payne, it's probably going to be some sort of old fashioned, I suspect.
Negatory. I believe it's a 7 and 7.
Interesting.
I believe that's what he drinks.
Is it? Okay. If you're Rusty Tuggle, it's rum and Coke.
Rusty
Diet
Tuggle's a
Coke.
rum and Coke. I remember Keith
Diet
Phillips
Coke.
was
Royal Reserve.
Royal Reserve. Yep. He used to bring it over to the house when we were up in the Dalles. And he'd bring his own ice, which is always impressive. You mentioned earlier, Noah, that you listen to a Jocko podcast. You guys have any podcast books you're reading or anything, that the audience may want to hear or you'd like to pass on of this is pretty impressive stuff, obviously outside of Data Distilled, because it is pretty nice.
I'm more or less into the military leadership books. I'm currently doing Conquering Crisis from the Admiral McCraven is the book I'm reading right now.
Cool.
I go in rabbit holes. So like Make Your Bed, which is it's the Admiral, but then it jumped, then there might be a reference to whatever, but I started going down the Dale Carnegie route, which I've seen that book or for whatever reason, right? How to Win Friends and Influence People. But then he wrote another one, How to Stop Worrying and Start Living, which I'm about halfway through. But then I get distracted because that's how my brain works. So I'm also listening to Hannibal, and as in like the military guy Hannibal. So I jump back and forth as I'm driving. If I get bored of listening to trying to improve myself, I'll do mind numbing things like listen to military or something like that.
I really like this Stop Worrying and Start Living. I think that resides well in the world we're in now, just with call it high anxiety. There's you can what if everything to death. So I'm gonna look into that one. So thank you for that, Justin.
That is actually a pretty good book. It's amazing that he wrote it in the 40s or 50s, and they've tried to improve it by footnotes. I'm about halfway through, but it's short, actually, if you listen to it.
Justin described the attributes you want in a mission critical superintendent, somebody that gets bored and jumps around a lot.
Gotta have the high energy. That's me.
I feel like all superintendents have a case of ADHD, otherwise they wouldn't be a superintendent, right?
Gotta be outside chasing squirrels.
That's right.
Herding cats.
Always. Yeah.
To that point, tell me one of the the kind of herding cats, managing people. I had a superintendent once tell me that he should have gone back to college and got a degree in not just sociology, but like a kindergarten degree, like education, because it's managing kids, it's managing people, it's a classroom of individuals. Give me an example when you had to manage a difficult conflict between two trade partners. How do you approach that situation? How do you manage conflict, one? And give me an example between two trade partners you've experienced in a critical situation.
Question
I don't
is,
know.
do you want 2015 Justin and Noah, or do you want 2025 Justin and Noah? I
That's a
think that
great
answer is
question.
going to differ quite a
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah, do you
You
want the
give one-
tomahawk chop version where you're going to do what I said you're going to do, or are you going to
Because
do
I
the
said
version
so.
where I've tricked you into doing what I think is right version?
I want Justin Goodlaxson to give me one, and I want Noah Westlake to give me one.
I'm going to use one trade partner just because it's a little bit fresher, right? And there's a little bit of a story there, but
You don't have to name names either.
yeah. And so we out here at TTX, because I happen to be at TTX today, we did these we started these meetings that we called we called them our Act Right meetings. And we grabbed them. It was about the time they were going to sign their contract, or very, very close, and they were working through their scope. And we would bring in the president or similar, somebody high up in their food chain, and it would be Mark Hudson, myself, and Setley. And we would sit down and we'd explain what it meant to work on this building with this client and with Jay Dunn, right? This is what I know. You've worked with Jay Dunn before. I know you've built maybe a data center before, but this is what it means to be on this site. So I know the story's getting a little bit long. We would do that, and then there'd be various states of people listening to us. And then they would go back to what they've always done. So we had an electrician, not the main electrician out here. So you'd have to go dig to figure out who it was, who listened to us, nodded their head, and then went and did what they thought was going to work for them, right? But as we know, mission critical, if you're an electrician, there's all sorts of checklists, as-builting, following of rules that you don't typically do. So if you don't put your A-team on it, you get in trouble really, really fast, right? And then when you don't put your A-team on it and you don't read the specs and you don't read all the extra requirements, then you get in the hole dollar-wise, right? So 2025, Justin, as Noah said, we called the electrician in and we hit them in the mouth, right? But we did it in a nice way. Hey, we told you that you owned this. We told you this was going to happen. We warned you this was going to happen. And you hit them, and then you get a little bit softer and say, now, we told you, we know you didn't buy it because you didn't change your number. You're not doing it. How can we help you? And then you back your way out, right? And I know that's not two different trade partners, but that's just the way of doing it. You hit them first, you tell them where they've done wrong, and then you offer to help them. But you're not changing your expectations. You're just giving them the example of what they need to do to get done to your expectations, but offering help. Where 2015, Justin would have just tomahawk chopped them and yelled at them and burnt the house down and sent them roaming away.
I'm not asking you, I'm telling you.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, you're saying that the approach now in the most effective way is that firm but fair,
Correct.
reprimand, but just communication. It's like, we've given you the opportunity to do it this way. It didn't work this way. This is what needs to happen. We're going to help you get through that. But you have to understand, we're doing this for good. This isn't the aggressive, you're doing it because I told you to do it that way. And there's no, it goes back to what you said earlier, Justin. You have to tell the why. When you provide the why, you get a better response than
That's
just
correct.
you're doing it because I told you to do it.
Yeah, I didn't make you come to that ACTRI meeting because we just wanted to waste your time. But you came assuming that I was wasting your time, and look, now I've got you back in this room. And we told you that if you did something wrong, we're going to pull you back in this room. If you did not, if you stayed in the inside the guardrails, you didn't have to come back to this room, right? And we generally got what we wanted, right? They were still coaching along the way, but it's giving them an option where they feel like an out or they're part of the solution.
Very good. Noah, how about you?
I think my anecdote is somewhat similar. Not necessarily mission critical. I was able to take a short sabbatical here recently to go do a different project, and I dabbled in the aviation division. As most of you know, I'm a plane nerd. But anyway, I had a trade partner that you could use all the emotional intelligence in the world, and you could not convince this guy against your best wishes, trying to let you know that you have the best intentions when trying to give them direction to listen to you. So we went the route of documentation. We escalated to the next level, got their project manager involved, and kept getting the similar excuses of, which I think everybody in this industry, not just mission critical, but also in the aviation industry, is just our biggest asset right now is our manpower. And there's a lack there, shortage, whatever you want to call it. But to get onto the airport, just like data centers, requires a high level of security, background checks, et cetera. So if you can imagine getting qualified, competent subcontractors out to the airport, getting them through the badging process, and then if they are short people, it's incredibly hard to get additional people added overnight. So it became ever prevalent for us to forecast where we're at in the job, forecast the labor counts, making sure that they had enough people to finish the job. Because if not, it could take up to 3 months to get somebody badged. And we had warned one of our trade partners, I don't think you have enough people. You don't have enough people. I kept getting the same excuse falling on deaf ears as the halls are empty. We don't have any more people badged. We can't get people to the airport, yada, yada, yada. Kind of internally in my own head, I drew a line in the sand of this is the point of no return. So prior to this date, I need to have a conversation with somebody much higher. So actually, without giving the project manager and the superintendent scout burn, brought him in for one last final conversation of, if you guys can't give me a plan of action, we're going to have to escalate over. Actually was able to get their head of manpower as well as their owner in a meeting and just discussing like, hey, this is an important client to you. This is an important client to us. This is the world's busiest airport. There's a lot of implications if we do not open these gates on time. I don't think anybody wants that egg on their face. So again, going back to explaining the why, going to explaining the importance of that relationship with that client, got them on board, and they were able to bring in some additional resources, i.e. be it nighttime shift work that they had going on at the airport, i.e. bringing in some a bunch of extra crews on Saturdays and Sundays. So while maybe it wasn't the traditional, just load the job up with manpower, we were able to do it in systematic ways and still accomplish the goal. So at the end of the day, it's all about accomplishing the mission, but taking that time to explain the why and why we're in this room, but also noticing when there is an issue and having the time frame with your team to actually forecast it out, do those exercises and know, okay, if we don't take action by this date, shame on me.
What's it like working in a live airport? That sounds like such a cool job.
Interestingly enough, it is almost like working in a data center. A lot of specialized systems, high security, access requirements, a lot of methods of procedures, 24-hour facility, world's busiest airport, can't have any hiccups, shutdowns, etc. without everybody knowing, planning well in advance, because you got to get notifications out to everybody and their brother. If you're shutting down a gas line that involves the concessions, you got to let Popeyes know a month in advance so that their sous chefs have gotten enough fried chicken ready for the next day.
Logistics nightmare kind of thing.
That's the other nightmare, is getting your stuff to where it needs to be.
Wow. Being at the tip of the spear on these projects, and quite frankly, the leaders of these projects and even these programs, you have such an insight to the clients or where it's going because of the communication you have everywhere. You're basically at the pinnacle of knowing everything that's going on. So you hear chatter from a trade partner, you hear chatter from owner, you hear chatter from the office. You guys have a lot of knowledge and you retain a lot of knowledge. Where do you think the industry is going in the mission critical world within the next 5 to 10 years from a superintendent perspective? Where do you think it's going to go in terms of logistically or planning wise and how these jobs are going to be put together and to the growth of it?
I mean, with the speed of construction that I think is not going to slow down, I think we're going to continue to potentially have labor shortages unless we can get some of these younger generations to see that working with your hands is a good career. It's fun. And getting them into the trades to have competent, qualified trades, I think there's going to be ever more prevalent to left shift a lot of this work off site. So a lot of this is going to become more or less kind of like the old cruise ship or destroyers being built, where it's going to be a lot of prefab. You're going to see a lot of modularization. I mean, we're already there, but as a superintendent, it's going to be thinking outside the box. It's going to be a lot more stuff. I hope that we're building more of this modularization into the initial design of the building, whether it be the design is going to start showing, precast leave outs or big roll up doors that are going to allow you to modularize every aspect of the data hall that you can just roll it in. Obviously we're already skidding electric rooms, but I think just how much more can we expand on that to left shift as much offsite as we can, because the speed's not going to slow down.
Yeah, I think the people is the biggest thing. If we don't have the people that are willing to go to where the data centers are built, that's the first thing. And then just having skilled craft. I mean, just the simple things, pulling wire without nicking it, right? I mean, anybody could pull wire, that you go figure it out, but pulling it without nicking it, for example. But back to what Noah's saying, which if you left shift and you start making stuff off site, you have to make the buildings much more plug and play, whatever that means. So he said the large overhead doors, but they need to be more the same. So I feel like the data center builders are going to have to start getting very, very similar in big boxes rather than anything fancy. Less stuff that Legos, right? That's right. Less stuff that plugs through walls, less stuff that involves, multiple connections, just one plug and play connection to something that can fit through a door or fit through an overhead or can be shipped. Set up your site so that you can move a crane where you need to move the crane. I don't remember what that law is, but at some point too, our servers are going to get smaller. And then if the servers get smaller, then the buildings don't have to be as big. So maybe there's going to be a short period of time where there's going to be a little gap where we're doing more retrofitting than we are really building the big, huge data centers with a bunch of empty space. But they're still going to end up right back where they were, right? It's whatever the next AI thing is, or whatever, we're going to be driving airplanes or whatever it is. It's going to take a lot of data, but we're going to have to make it simpler to make it go faster. It's got to be easier to allow interchangeable stuff. That's a real technical word, right? Interchangeable stuff, but it's got to be, you got to be able to work your way around the logistics of it. You can't have a bunch of fiber that's crisscrossing the ground and then you got to go change something and dig it all up. That's not needed. You got to do something that's going to allow it to work 3 different ways for you.
You were referencing Moore's Law, I assume.
I assume that's what it is. Yeah, I was blanking on what it is, but
Chris is going to try to act like he was smart. He got that from Fernie.
I knew what it was. I just didn't know the years. I was just trying to figure out the years.
How many years is it?
That's fair. It doubles every year.
Yeah.
And that's
And
that's what I was trying to figure out is,
at some point, what we have now is it's just like the big old, I'm going to throw Iowa State out there for Mr. Fernholz. But, Iowa State, that first computer is the size of J. Dunn office over there. And now it's in our phones. And at some point, those servers are going to do the same thing, whatever that is. I don't know that, but.
I mean, when I first started building data centers, I think it was mine and Teddy's second client together. It was a colo. They had a tenant on their floor that still had tape decks, magnetic tape decks.
That is insane. And that goes back to the size of these projects you're talking about. So what was 3 megawatts that we talked about earlier, Noah, is now 300 megawatts they're literally fitting more stuff in a smaller bag. You're fitting 100 pounds of stuff in a 2-pound bag. And that's the increase of the densities that you're talking about. Where are these racks going? Where are the servers going? And you guys are seeing that every day of that kind of technology change, which is got to be fascinating as well as frustrating on plan the work and work the plan. It's going to change. I guess that makes it an exhilarating industry to be in, because you're always doing something, but it's never consistent. And we think we have built the same thing over and over again and on these larger programs and hyperscalers, but in reality, I'm not sure we've repeated a single thing in any project because of what you just talked about, Justin, that Moore's law. Things are doubling every year. So that means there's going to be inherent change. The only thing that's constant in this world is change. And that's, I find that, exhilarating and fascinating to be part of.
Which brings you to the number one rule of how do you build a data center? Build so fast that they can't catch up to change it. You're already past that point. I'm sorry. Better catch up.
That's a great response.
Yeah. That works sometimes. Sometimes it doesn't, and you redesign a whole building mid building.
Yeah, sometimes you tear down a building, right?
Well, sometimes you could tear down a building, or you could build a building inside a building. I mean, that's happened before.
All those things have happened. Yeah.
All great stuff. Okay, I have some fun ones here that, Noah, you congratulations to you. You are a new father as of March, I believe. So
that's correct.
One, have you caught back up on your sleep yet? So
I have hit what many have told me is the baby lottery. She started sleeping through the night at 5 weeks.
Oh, lucky.
And we may have had, at this point, maybe I can count it on 2 hands how many nights she's woken up in the middle of the night once. So I've been told I hit the jackpot.
You hit the jackpot.
That is not normal.
So I think sometimes if you have a newborn, it makes it harder to go to concerts, but I love this question to everybody, and we'll keep it for time's sake, since there's 2 of you. If there's 3 concerts you could go to in the world, just to let the audience know what kind of personalities Noah and Justin are, what would those concerts be?
I would say Dave Matthews Live at the Gorge has been the best show I've ever seen. Growing up, going to Ozfest was always fun. I used to work at a concert pavilion.
Nice.
Cool.
And OAR. Those would be my 3.
I'm kind of goofy. I'm not a huge concert fan, but I would go if I could find an AC/DC one. I feel like that would be very, very fun. And then my wife likes old country, so it'd probably be some old country star that is barely alive that pulls up in a van that is barely driving because he's no longer making money. So I would just do it to please Kathy.
That's awesome. What questions do you have for me, or that you want the audience to know about? Any commentary you want the audience to know about? Something that you wish you would have known going into the construction industry and mission critical for specifically?
I feel like I was very surprised. People are surprised by the mission critical jobs once they get into them. And yes, you work a lot of hours. All construction seems to work a lot of hours, but everybody that gets into them and enjoys the puzzle of it. And I guess if anything that would have prepared me was how maybe addicting it was, the change or the challenge compared to building, and maybe it would have done that if I would have stayed building commercial buildings, but it's the puzzle of maybe figuring out the owner and what are they going to change next, and maybe reading the super secret spreadsheets that they're going to share to you, and you have to guess like what they're going to change. But I think Noah already said the puzzle, but I feel like everyone that's involved with the mission critical group likes that puzzle of it, but it's a different puzzle for each person. For Fernholz, it's nodding right there. It's the commissioning and how it makes it work, right? Noah's always been much more involved in the commissioning. I tended to rely on Tony Litton when he told me it was time to come in and start talking to people, I'd come in and start talking to people. But I would always pay attention, right? What do you mean that widget doesn't work? What does that widget even do, Tony? Tell me what that widget does, right? So I think that just being willing to accept new things is what that's what I'm trying to get to, is what I should have been prepared for, right? Be more open to whatever comes at you, and you're going to be better prepared. I don't know if that makes sense, but before this is how it's done, and you have to get out of your own head of this is how it's done and be willing to think around how it's done, and maybe there's a new way to do it. And it may come from somebody who's very, very experienced, or it may come from some new grad right out of college that says, I've seen this before. I saw it on some, a professor talked about this and I happened to watch a video. And you just have to be willing to listen to those people.
I like it. I feel like, no, I think you're right. I think Justin, to your point of, you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable in a lot of situations, and some people thrive in that, some people don't, and that's perfectly fine. I think that's the industry we're in, and I credit my daughter for that kind of thing. She has that kind of personality where we got her exposed to that, and she came back and said, I just have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And she's in college rowing for Iona University, and that is something she's never done before, and she's thriving. But that was a situation where she had to be comfortable being uncomfortable. I learned that real quick in this industry, and I thrive in that because of it is constantly a puzzle or a change or different, and I like it. A lot of people don't, but that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Noah?
I could echo what Justin said, but just another attribute about the whole thing. And I know trying to talk to some of these younger folk about just the travel lifestyle. It's not for everybody, but the one thing, if you could go back to 2011, know that, did I know what I was getting into? One thing you don't think about along the journey is, everybody always says it's not the destination, it's the journey. It's the amount of people you meet along the way, the amount of regions you get exposed to, the amount of trade partners you get to meet along the way, those relationships you form. When you go out of town, it's almost like a built-in family, built-in friendship group that you got, because that's all you got when you're 1,200 miles away from the mothership or your nearest office. Those are your people. That is who you break bread with in the morning and do work, and those are the people you hang out with on the weekends. Become your close friends, go through quite a bit together. And, I think that cements a team real well. But, the amount of, like I said, I think I'm up to 10 different states now, but, looking back, what I've had, the amount of adventures that my wife and I have had along the way, if I didn't travel, if I didn't build data centers, I think that's something you don't necessarily get when you talk construction, but on more of the vulnerable side of what you do, when you travel for these jobs, is you get to see a whole lot of the country, go on some serious adventures, and sometimes it's with your coworkers.
Amen. I think that's absolutely right.
I think there's an opportunity. No, it triggered it in my head, but there's an opportunity there. Caitlin Munshank, South Central HR manager, director. She said to me once that like the top 150 people in this company know each other very, very well. And then the rest of the company doesn't know those people like we think like we think everybody knows each other. And I want to compare the same thing to mission critical. Is if we walked into an office, I would almost guarantee that some mission critical person would know more people in that office than if you just picked a random person that's worked out of, the Minneapolis office, just because we've been so many places, and met so many people and worked with different teams. I feel like I've worked with, I think I could walk in almost any office and know somebody or run into somebody that I've worked with.
But it's
or
not
been
just
on the
that,
same
you
job.
collect
Yeah.
those people and you collect those relationships. And then when
Right.
you need to leverage those relationships of, I did it, when I did the helicopter, I'd never done one before, but I was able to call Kansas City, and then they put me in contact with somebody else that had done a helicopter. When I was up in Oregon and I needed a specific piece of equipment that we had at IDI, I was able to call the Atlanta logistics manager and because I had formed that relationship 8 years prior. It's like people don't understand, like when you start making those relationships and get into those different regions, you form those, and then you have all those extra assets and extra tools in your toolbox as you go throughout your career, those extra mentors that you may not have been exposed to.
We are very lucky we have the exposure to all of those people on a regular basis. It is a blessing, kind of in the disguise of working in a national group and a vertical outside of just one area. You get exposure and you get to learn from and meet different people all over the country. So absolutely, totally agree.
And Noah talks like him, by the way. If you
Like
allow
who?
allow Noah to go to a region, he will automatically start talking like that region. That is
He'll have the slang and he'll have the.
That's right. Wherever it is, that's what he starts doing.
Oh, that's a goal I need to get to.
Justin is just never there long enough to pick up on it.
All righty, gentlemen. I want to say thanks again. I think this is a great episode that I hope the listeners that we have appreciate what you two have provided, J.E. Dunn and the construction industry, and more specifically the mission critical world. Your knowledge is definitely gold, and anytime you guys get an opportunity to share, I know people will appreciate it. So thank you so much for being a part of it. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the week and have a good cocktail.